Now, the next value also leads on from this. It also goes along with Atma Vinigraha, and it is Indriyartheshu Vairagyam. Again, we're going into more inward-looking values now. So beautifully, Bhagavan Krishna has brought us from external values like amanitvam, adambitvam, things that deal with the external world and all of this. Of course, these Indriyartheshu Vairagyam also deals with the external world, but it is more introspective now. It is more for one's spiritual practice, more progressive on the spiritual path in spiritual life. So Indriyanam artaha, which means objects of the senses. Anything external is object of the sense. So all external objects are called Indriyarthas, including all that is promised in Swarga, in heaven. Many things are promised by many religions in heaven. You know, that whatever heaven, idea of heaven there is, even the Vedas are the original idea of heaven, Swarga. So we have all sorts of pleasures that can be experienced in Swarga. Everything, big list is given. And other religions also have their idea of heaven, but they're still classed under Indriyartha, which are objects of senses, sense objects. So Bhagavan says here, Indriyartheshu, with reference to the objects of the senses. What? With reference to the objects of the senses, Vairagyam. Vairagyam is often translated as detachment. No, it is not a very, I mean, you have to explain the word. If we translate it as detachment, it has to be explained properly, but it is not easy to detach from the world. How can we detach? We cannot just detach. So the best word in English to understand it is dispassion. It is a dispassionate, having a dispassionate feeling about objects of the senses and external things. And how do we develop, more importantly, dispassion doesn't come naturally. Dispassion comes after a lot of experience, life experience. It also comes after a lot of vichara, a lot of experience, and your actual inquiry into your life experience to see what is the limitations of all I have experienced. That is where it comes. But before we get to that, let us see what is Indriya actually. Indriya are senses, sense organs. So sense organs in Sanskrit are called Jnanendriyani. Jnanendriyani are sense organs. They are the organs of knowledge. Literally translated, it means organs of knowledge. Very beautiful understanding of sense organs. Why? Because they are my input from this world. They are the entrance gates to my mind from the world. So the organs of knowledge bring in data of this external world. And the mind processes that data, and what is this data it brings in? Shabda, sparsha, rupa, rasa, gandha, which means shabda, sound, sparsha, touch, rupa, form and color, rasa, taste, gandha, smell. This, through these 5 exit gates, so the entrance gates, these are entrance gates, we take in all the experiences of the external world. Now, when we're asleep, all the senses are dormant. Where is our interaction with the world in sleep? It is not there anymore, is it? So it is only in the waking state when the senses interact, they bring in data from the external world, and I respond to that data beautifully. The human body is so beautifully designed, the body, mind, sense complex, intelligently put together. There cannot be but a supreme intelligence that has done this, because no human being can create this amazing, amazing instrument. The body, mind, sense complex as an instrument is an intelligently put together instrument, because these, when I receive the input from the world, how do I react with the input? So that is where the karmendriyani, or the organs of action, come into the picture. We are invested with 5 organs of actions as well. We express ourselves in the outer world, interacting with others, living our lives through the karmendriyani. So these are the exit gates. The organs of knowledge are the entry gates for my mind, and these are the exit gates. And what are these exit gates? Vak, pani, pada, payu, upasta. So these are the vak, which is the speech. That is how I interact with the world. My mind brings in data, and I interact with my vak, my speech. Pani, hands. Pada, feet. Payu, the excretory organs, Upasta, the procreative organs. This is how we interact with the external world. So these are all given instruments. These instruments are given, and the powers in the instruments vary from person to person. Some people may have very good 20/20 vision. Other people have very, very, weak eyesight. Some people have good hearing. Some people have less good hearing. All of these powers vary. Why do they vary? Because there is a karmic reason also behind even how strong the power is. Everything is based on one's karma only. So these instruments, although everybody has these instruments at their disposal, they vary from person to person. So what Bhagavan is saying here is that one must avoid too much indulgence in any sense pleasures, which all this input, the data with all the sense objects, it brings in data. And sometimes we indulge too much in the external world. And this value, Bhagavan is saying, too much indulgence weakens the body, it weakens the mind, and a weak willpower cannot accomplish anything in life. Even if you start, we all have the experience, we start a diet or we start something. Anytime I break anything that I've started, I always get guilt. I always start something that, I want to manage my sense organs. I want to manage my sense pleasures. I start something, especially dieting, that is the most difficult thing, to manage the tongue. So I started, and then what happens? Because the willpower is weak, again, I succumb to the objects of the senses. Number one object of the sense, taste. That is why in our Hindu culture, we have many days where there's fasting, Ekadashi. We have every fortnightly, we have at least one day where we reduce the need for the tongue to eat certain things that it enjoys as well. So this value also teaches us constant alertness in life. Alertness when the sense organs come into contact with any objects of the senses, what happens? There is a possibility, there is a probability that you can develop attachment to those sense objects. Bhagavan talks about this elaborately in the 2nd chapter of Bhagavad Gita in very beautiful verses. These are the ladder. He speaks of, in 2 verses, he speaks of the ladder of decline, mental decline of a human being. In verse 62, he says, Dhyayato vishayan pumsaha sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodho bijayate. Here he says, when your mind, dhyayato, when you start contemplating on the sense objects, on external objects, what happens? You start developing an attachment. Mentally, the attachment, without your knowledge, it starts forming. The attachment starts forming to that object. And what happens? He says here very clearly, he says, Sangasteshu pajayate. When that attachment is born, Sangat sanjayate kamaha. Then the desire awakens. I want that object. I want that object because I feel if I have that object, if I have that person, if I have that situation in my life, I am going to be satisfied. I'm going to be happy. That is why we fulfill our desires, right? We don't go after things that will make us unhappy. The whole reason we go after sense pleasure and sense object is because we want happiness. That is a human urge as well. But what do we find? Bhagavan says, be very careful, because if your desire is not fulfilled, many of the times in our life, desire is not fulfilled. It goes unfulfilled. We cannot get everything we want in life. We all know this. Nobody gets everything they want in life. So what happens when I don't get what I want? He says, be careful, because anger arises from desire, suppressed, unfulfilled desire. He says, kamat krodho bijayate. That is our source for anger. Anyone exhibiting any anger, it is not really with anything outside. It is suppressed desire expressing itself. Outside is only a trigger. Lord Krishna himself says this. So he says, warning from this verse. This first verse is a warning. The verse following this, it shows even further decline of the mind. If we go on to pursue sense objects and indulge in sense object, Bhagavan says, the final thing is buddhi pranashyati, your whole intellect, you will be destroyed. As a person, you destroy yourself. So he warns, The mental condition is dependent on sense organs. We don't let everything and anything into our minds, because anything and everything can create disturbance. So Swami Chinmayananda, a great sadhu, he used to say, one should wear a sign, always a sign in front of oneself saying, no admission without permission. Nothing should enter the senses without your permission. So that is very important to understand, because we mechanically allow everything in. If I see something, I don't think, oh, is it good to look at that? You see this statue is very famous, see no evil, hear no evil, the three monkeys, right? Speak no evil. It's exactly like that. We have to learn to manage ourselves. We don't allow no admission without permission. I master that. He also says in the 5th chapter at the end, when he starts his explanation of how one should meditate, the first step in meditation, Lord Krishna talks about when he says, Bahyan sparshan bahikritva. It's a very interesting step to meditation he discusses first. What is that step? He says, keep objects of the senses external. Keep objects of the senses external. Now, it's a very funny thing to say, because they are already external, right? We will say the objects of the senses are already external. Why is Lord Krishna telling me to keep them outside? Because we internalize everything. We cannot meditate when we have all these objects clamoring in our mind. So the first step of meditation is, whatever there is in the mind, whatever desires are there, keep them external. Begin meditation, bahyan sparshan bahikritva, keep it external. This is the only way we can develop mastery over the sense organs. Through the sense organs alone, we cannot punish the sense organs. They are not punishable because they're only data inputters. They have no volition of their own. It is you that allow things in. It is not the sense organs. So we don't need to do gora tapas, so much tapas, and saying, no, I will not hear this, I will not see this, I will not taste this. Some people go to the other extreme and they do a lot of tapasya like that. That is also not what Bhagavan is saying. Lord will not have gifted us with sense organs if he did not want us to enjoy sense pleasures, right? It doesn't make sense. Why give eyes? Why give ears? Why give nose? Why give taste? Why give touch? And then say, don't use your senses. That is not the idea of Vairagyam. We can enjoy everything moderately. Everything is there in the world provided for moderate enjoyment. Moderation is the key in life. But don't indulge, don't go excessively into anything. This is what, because once you start indulging, going excessively, addictions can develop. All of these are issues that can happen in our life. So the senses are like children, they demand their respective objects. Kids, when they throw tantrum, if they don't get what they want, then they manipulate the parents into getting it, right? So here is where we have to we treat the sense organs. No, don't pamper them and live an alert life. Here, Bhagavan says 2 practices. This also brought up in the Shastra. It's not mentioned in the Bhagavad Gita, but in another text, Tattva Bodha, as preparation for the mind, Dhamma and Shama, very important 2 aspects of preparing the mind. Dhamma means damming in. Dam in any kind of external expression. When you don't want your mind to go out, you don't want the senses to go out, damn. So that's the first step in this practice. And then you have to resolve the energy that you suppress. It's not suppression. We should not suppress it. We should resolve it. How do we resolve that energy? We should learn to, again, express it in a different way. You can express it through japa. You can express it through prayer. Even loud chanting helps the energy to come out. Because Bhagavan says very clearly that these senses, he says, yatato hyapi kaunteya purushasya vipaschitaha indriyani pramatini haranti prasabham manaha. These senses, he says, are strong and turbulent. Oh, Arjuna, they can forcibly carry away your mind, even of a person who is endowed with self-control and discrimination. So in the next, in the same chapter, he says, learn to be like a turtle. He uses the analogy of a turtle. Yada samharate chayam kurmongani va sarvashaha. Indriyan indriyarthebhyah tasya prajna pratishtita. Very beautiful verse, that you have to be like a turtle that withdraws its limbs into its shell at will when it wants to. You learn to have that type of thing with your senses as well. Withdraw yourself whenever you don't. You have to be the master. Whenever your eyes, you don't want your eyes to look at something, you learn to control. You learn to withdraw yourself. And this is how we become established in spiritual wisdom and spiritual knowledge. It is a very important this value, Indriyartheshu Vairagyam. It comes in very different forms, but it comes throughout the Gita, and in descriptions of a wise person, this is mentioned again and again. So it is a very, very important aspect of spiritual life. Now, the other aspect of this value is the word Vairagyam. Vairagyam is an often misunderstood word. As I said, it is not detaching from senses. It is having a, how do we withdraw? It is having a dispassionate attitude. A Vairagyam actually means Vitaragaha, without longing. The actual Sanskrit words mean Vitaragaha, without longing. So don't long for things of the senses. Don't long for people. Don't long for places. Don't long for situations, especially during this lockdown time when all the world, we cannot go on holidays. We cannot go anywhere very much. We cannot meet people. It is a very difficult time. So this longing may come, oh, when can I go here? When can I do this? This is where Vairagyam becomes very important as a spiritual value. This longing after things doesn't come. And that longing won't come when I accept everything as prasadam. The whole situation that is given is Bhagavad prasadam. It is from the altar of Bhagavan. Whatever is happening, whatever variants, mutations, everything that's coming, it is not in our hands. It's not in our control. It is all Ishvara's order also. So raga is reducing, this vairagya means reducing your longing for things in life as well. In another text, vairagyam is explained in a very beautiful way. Iha mutra phala bhoga viragam. Iha swarga bhogeshu icha rahityam. Which means rahityam means devoid of, freedom from all emotional addictions, all emotional hooks to sense objects and sense pleasures. And this icha is, icha is total dependence. Dependence to what? Bhogeshu. So any kind of pleasure that I experience at one time, if I want it repeated again and again, then I get into this addictive, addictive attitude. Again, there's no harm in experiencing desire. Even Swami says, have a ceiling on your desires. He doesn't say get rid of all desires. That is why Bhagavan so beautifully says, have a ceiling on your desires, which means you can have desires. No harm in having desires. As a human being, you can have desires, you can experience, but he says, be very careful, go for ethical desires, desire in moderation, and he even goes as far as to say in the Bhagavad Gita, Dharma aviruddho sarva bhuteshu kamosmi. I am in the form, Lord Krishna says, of desire in every human being. I reside as the form of desire in a human being, which is unopposed to dharma. So if Bhagavan himself is Icha Shakti, he is residing in the form of desire in us, there is nothing wrong with desire. But again, it is over excessive. We're talking all about excessive desires here. So in this understanding of Vairagya, of dispassion, Swarga is also brought in. So the desires for future pleasures, for afterlife pleasures also, we have to curtail, we have to bring down if we want spiritual success. Now, how do I develop this dispassion? This is more interesting. Dispassion, what does it mean? Dispassion means objectivity. Actually, the word in English is objectivity, which is the key. Objectivity means I have a healthy relationship with everything in life. I have a healthy relationship with objects of the senses. I have a healthy relationship with people in my life. I don't turn away from sense objects. I don't suppress and repress my pleasures. But dispassion means no passion. It's like a child, when you're a 3-year-old child, when you get a balloon in your hand, you're so excited with the balloon. Now, when that child is 20, if you hand that person a balloon, will they be as excited with the balloon? I don't know, maybe some 20-year-olds maybe, but generally when we grow older, we grow out of desire. That is what happens. The same thing that took all our attention, took all our energy, took all our focus. After some time, we find, what happened to it? It wasn't that important all along anyway. It just vanishes. If we let things go, it can just go. So dispassion means no passion. And how do we develop this objectivity? This is now the method of developing objectivity that will give me the dispassion from sense objects and people and situations as well. The first way to develop objectivity is to see that everything has the nature of coming and going. There is no desire. If you look, anybody can see, when you fulfilled a desire in your life, has it fully satisfied you? Has it made you feel fully adequate? Has it given you everything you thought it would give you? This is the question we have to ask ourselves. Because if it had, then I would not go after the next desire, right? The logic is, if one desire fulfilled was enough for me, would I ever seek something else? No. But what happens? It is not enough, because karma palam, desire fulfillment, is only karma palam coming to you. And karma palam means fruits of action. Fruits are perishable. The very word in Sanskrit reveals it is perishable. It is not permanent. It is going to come into your life. It's going to give you a little bit of pleasure, maybe sometimes a lot of pleasure, but it's going to vanish. That is the nature of the world. Nothing remains. And then when it goes, what happens? We'll see. That is also a way to examine life as well. Ramana Maharishi says in a beautiful verse in Upadesha Saram, Karturajnaya prapyate phalam, karma kim param, karma tat jadam, kriti mahodado patana karanam, phalama shashvatam, gati nirodakam. This fruits of our actions, they are impermanent. Keep seeing the impermanence. They come and go. They perish with time. And have a healthy relationship. Then you start having healthy relationship towards things, healthy relationships towards people, because you realize nothing is a source of a problem for you. Nothing can cause problem for you. Either having something, it doesn't cause a problem for you. Getting rid of something also is not a problem for you. You're not subjective anymore. You're objective. Whatever comes, comes. Whatever leaves, leaves. That is the attitude that one starts developing. And nothing in this world can give you full, total security. Of course, we look for money for all securities. If we have money, we think, oh, we'll have security. But however much money you have, and you can examine lives of very rich people, you still feel you need more and more. Even if you're the #1 billionaire in the world, if you go down to #2 on the list, you will say, you will be aiming for #1. Why did I go down to #2? Human nature is that. Nobody can feel satisfied, however much. So money also is God-given. It does have a value, and it has a God-given value. It has a man-given value. I give extra value to things in life that they don't deserve. This is what Shastra keeps saying. I add extra value to life because I think if I get that thing, I will feel totally secure. All my insecurity will be eliminated if I achieve power, name, fame, all of this. That most humanity goes for all of this so they can eliminate all sort of insecurities as well. But Shastra very clearly says that insecurity will not leave you. It will always remain. However much you gain in life, how successful you are in the world, insecurity will not go, because the fundamental problem has not been addressed. And that fundamental problem will only be addressed when you bring vivekaha into your life. Vivekaha is discriminative analysis between what is permanent and what is temporary. What is permanent in life? Well, we don't know except from the scriptures. So if we take the scriptures as pramana, means of knowledge, we realize what is the only permanent thing in our life. The only permanent thing in our life is the Lord, Bhagavan, Ishvaraha, whatever name you want to give it. It is that is going to be with you through life, from birth, through life, to death, after death as well. Only Bhagavan is there, the permanent thing. We can call that Bhagavan, Brahman, Ishvara, all names. Everything else is going to leave. It's going to drop off one day or another. This is the truth of life. This is a fact of life. This is another thing that Krishna brings up as a value later on, very interestingly. But this is the discriminative analysis that has to be done. Everything is in the nature of impermanence. There's only one permanent. Let us stick to the permanent. I may not see the permanent. The permanent is imperceptible to my senses, but I trust what the scriptures, what the rishis, what the masters said, that only Lord is the permanent. So everything else in my life takes, again, the priority changes now. Artha Kama, I realize this. Security, when I analyze life, I realize security and pleasure can never fill up the sense of incompleteness, the inner void that we experience. Vairagya is born of such viveka. Viveka, when I do this discriminative analysis in my life, then Vairagya immediately comes, because I realize, what is this, all this impermanence I'm going after again and again. Constantly I'm making effort to go after this, but it's not giving me what I really want. And why Shastra also discusses very elaborately what it is that makes us go after objects. It is a phenomenon called Shobhana Adhyasa. Shobhana Adhyasa means I superimpose a value onto this world, onto people, onto situations, more than they merit. I think that they will be source of pure joy for me. I think I will be fully satisfied if I have that thing or that person or that situation in my life. No, that is my own projection on the world. And that is why I end up getting disappointed again and again in life, because things of the world can never give you what you really want. So that is why once I realized that, I learned to live my life objectively, much more objective over things. I lose interest. Interest starts going. Where is the interest? Swami often used to say, tinsel and trash. When Bhagavan is there, why are you interested in this tinsel and trash? You have the gold, you have the diamond with you, and you're going after all this tinsel and trash in the world. So the only thing that becomes real in one's life becomes that understanding of the Lord, moksha, the pursuit. And all my lifestyle then takes on a different dimension. It becomes geared towards discovering that, understanding that only Bhagavan is the source of permanent happiness for me. Nothing else can fulfill me like that as well. So this is how Shastra very logically analyzes the impermanence of the world and the limitations of what the world can give me. Pleasure also depends on three factors. If we examine any kind of pleasure, depends on three factors. First, the object of pleasure has to be available for me. It may be very difficult to gain, a lot of stress, strain, money, toil to gain the object of pleasure. So number one factor, the object has to be available for me to experience pleasure. Second, I need to have proper frame of mind to experience the object. Even if I have the object, suppose I have all the pleasures in life available to me. If I'm depressed, will I have the chance to experience any objects? No. We've seen people, millionaires, billionaires, who live in great palatial residences, who have all things at their disposal, and they're not happy. Why? Because mind is not available to experience pleasures. So number two factor I have to see. The third factor that pleasure experience depends on is the instruments to enjoy the pleasure. If I have failing faculties, my sense of smell is going, my hearing is going, my eyesight is dropping off, and I want to experience the object, but I can't because all my faculties are failing. Then all this again shows the limitation of pleasure. It takes all these three factors to come together for me to experience any pleasure. And even if I experience pleasure, there are three pains Shastra talks about, three pains that come with every pleasure that you experience as well. So pleasure becomes a real pain eventually anyway. What are the three pains associated with pleasure? First of all, there's a pain in acquisition. You spend your time, energy, money in acquiring the source of pleasure. That is the first pain that we have. The second pain that we have is pain of retention. We don't want that pleasurable experience to leave us. So we want to retain it. It's very painful trying to keep something up, right? So that is also a second pain after gaining the object of pleasure. And the last pain, which is the most difficult pain, is that when I discover pleasure from something, the loss of that pleasure gives me a lot of pain. So there's the pain of acquisition, the pain of retention, pain of loss as well. And even if you have the objects, what does a Shastra says, every object of pleasure in this world comes with threefold factors as well. It is dukkha mishritvam. Dukkha mishritvam means that object which gives you so much pleasure has the potential to give you equal amount of pain. Yehi samsparshaja bhoga dukkha yonaya evate adyantavantah kaunteya nateshu ramate buddha. Same object which gives so much pleasure can immediately turn to a source of pain. We see this in relationships, especially all the time. Honeymoon period, wonderful. When you get married first, it's wonderful for the first few months like that. Then what happens? All the fights start happening. Generally, newly married couples, that same object that gives so much pleasure, what happens? Becomes source of pain. This is dukkha mishritvam. Any object you take has that potential to give you equal pain as well. Another limitation of sense objects is atriptikaram. You get bored after it after a while. You get bored of it. We've had how many iPhones have come now? iPhone 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Get bored of 3, go for 4, get bored of 4, go to 5. Always getting bored. Atriptikaram means you want to keep, you never satisfies. So you want to keep changing. You don't like one object of pleasure, you'll get another one. Atriptikaratvam, because no object can give you tripti for a long time. It's not lasting. And the last defect of any object of pleasure is bandhakatvam. You can get bound by it. You can get bound by it, which means I cannot live without it. If that thing goes in my life, I cannot live without. Dangerous. So objects will not solve the problem. We have to see that they will meet a cure. They will meet the current need, but they will not solve the problem. So total objectivity means seeing all the defects of sense pleasures, sense objects, and developing a dispassionate attitude towards life. Your intellect should hold sway over your mind and senses. Mark Twain once said, a very famous saying, he said, I know how to manage my addictions. I've given up smoking so many times. So that is exactly what happens. We think we can manage. So the mind, the intellect should hold sway over my mind. I don't need to let the mind always rule. And very wonderful description of Vairagya that is given by Swami Dayananda. He said, the dispassion is seeing the absence of connection between what I want and what I do. How do I develop dispassion? I see the absence of connection between what I want. What I want is to be happy. I want to be happy all the time. I want to be free from the sense of limitation, of the feeling of smallness, of inadequacy. That's what I really want. And what do I do to get that? I look for all this freedom in things that are leaving in life, things that are impermanent in life. So will I ever get limitless from limited? Is that all any possibility of gaining the limitless that I want to be, that I want to discover from limited? It's not logical. We can never discover limitlessness from that which is limited. So this is, when I see this absence of connection, then I really become a dispassionate person in life. And this is what the value talks about. Indriyartheshu Vairagyam. It is having a healthy relationship with people in my life, healthy relationship with situations, healthy relationships with any sense pleasures that I experience. Once I experience something, I enjoy it, it should be forgotten. That is a wise person. A wise person also will go to sense pleasure experiences. Because as I said, it's a gift. This world is a gift. It is a gift given for us to experience, but I will not ask for repeat experience. That is what we do. We want, once we experience some pleasure, we want it repeated. Then we want it repeated again. This is where I get into the trap. Whereas if I learn to live my life, I have a wonderful experience, beautiful experience, wonderful 2-week holiday somewhere, go, I have a lovely break. I have a lovely holiday, very relaxing. I come back refreshed. I don't think, oh, holiday's over. I wish I could go back. I want to go back. That type of thinking one has to leave. Enjoy, let it go. Enjoy, let go. That is how a wise person, intelligent person will live their life, not craving after pleasure after pleasure after pleasure.